Thanks for joining me. Glad you came by. I'd like to take a minute and talk to you about this week. Last week we celebrated our triumphal entry into Jerusalem with Jesus, and next week we're going to be going to the empty tomb and the risen Christ, but we don't want to forget what happens this week, the passion of Christ, the pain, the suffering, the death. Before Passover, Jesus sent two of his disciples into town, and he told them, "You will see a man walking with a water jug, and when he comes to meet you, follow him and go into the house that he goes into and ask the owner of the house what room we are to use for the Passover, and he'll show you." And he did. And so they prepared a Passover meal, and Jesus took his disciples to that meal, and he was excited to be there with them. And they began to discuss who was the greatest among them. Jesus explained to them that they were to be servants. And he said that one of them would betray him. They were all agitated by that. All of them except one who already knew who that was. After the meal, they went up to the garden to pray. And Jesus asked his disciples if they would please wait and stay awake and pray also, but he went off by himself to pray. And he was so distraught that he began to sweat blood. God sent an angel to give him strength. And Jesus said, "God, if you can, take this cup from me, but if it's my job, if it's what I have to do, I'll do it. Your will be done, not mine." And he began to understand that he had to move through this fear and this difficult time, that there was no choice. He came back and found the disciples asleep. He said, "You couldn't even stay awake 1 hour?" As they're discussing this, Judas comes back with the high priests and the temple police and the Jewish authorities to arrest Jesus. And Jesus says, "I see you every day in the temple. I see you every day in the market, and you come by night." But they did arrest him. And they take him before Pilate. Pilate finds nothing, and he's not guilty of anything. And he said, "I find no guilt in this man." And they said, "Crucify him." So he sent him on to Herod. Herod could find nothing that he had done wrong either. He made fun of him. He put an expensive robe on him. He mocked him. Sent him back to Pilate. Pilate was going to let Jesus go, but the religious authorities, they didn't want that. In fact, Pilate said, "It's my tradition to turn one of your people loose at this time," and they called for Barabbas, a killer, a common murderer, to be released instead of Jesus. And Pilate acquiesced. He said, "Okay," and he sentenced Jesus to death. He had him scourged. He had him beaten. They mocked him. They put a crown of thorns upon him. They slapped him. When he was nearly beaten to death, they took him out and put a cross upon his back and told him to carry it to Golgotha. Partway there, Simon of Cyrene was watching the procession, and they took the cross off Jesus and put it on him. He said, "You carry it the rest of the way." Stumbling to the hill called Golgotha, or the skull, they put Jesus on the cross. As the people watched, they began to mock him. They took turns gambling for his clothes. Jesus, in agony, said, "My God, why have you forgotten me?" But God had not forgotten him. Through the agony of Jesus' death, God watched. And at the end, Jesus said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." and he died. His body was given to a local man who put it in his own tomb. That tomb was sealed with a boulder and a guard placed outside. And there we will remain until Easter morning. Do not forget the pain, the sacrifice, and the death that Jesus Christ went through for you and me. It gives the meaning to the empty tomb on Easter morning. Amen and amen.